How's it going, Paul? Enjoying lockdown, mate?
Yeah, it's all right. I've been able to rediscover gaming, which has been good. You know,
this is pretty much what we were just talking about. I've been playing Jedi Fallen Order, and I've just went on a pure massive Star Wars binge. Like, I can't stop myself now.
Wow,
can't imagine
but the game's amazing.
I can't imagine an MP's get much time for gaming, mate.
Not time for much, you know. Yeah, so it's been the slowdown's been good in some respects, I suppose, you know, but it gets a bit frustrating after a while. I think, you know, the novelty's definitely worn off.
Why?
For sure, mate. Being confined to a house, even no matter what your situation, I think, like you're saying, it does end up feeling, I don't know, cabin fever or something like that. You want to just break it. Want to just go and run along to Loch Lomond or something. I don't know. Just go and let myself go fucking mental.
Aye. I know exactly what you mean, mate. Me and the missus had our first sort of big lockdown Barney. After the 8 weeks was not too bad. She got a new rug that we were trying to tuck under the couch, and I lost the rag with it because the couch clicks together and I couldn't click it back together. I stormed out into the kitchen. The next thing, she was throwing burgers about the kitchen in a huff as well, and then 10 minutes later we were just like, that had absolutely nothing to do with anything that was going on here whatsoever. This is just the pot bubbling out at the same time, you know what I mean? So it was quite funny, actually, watching her go back and pick up her burgers and stuff like
that. It is a bit strange, you know, just having to deal with the non-specific stress and anxiety, you know. I think exercising helps, to be honest with you. If you're out running, it just helps you to burn off a bit of that kind of knee, you know, that kind of thing when your leg just starts kind of going, you know, like trembling, you know.
Yeah, you start getting sort of nervous tics and stuff like that. You're just sitting going, try and shake it off. But exercise has helped me a lot, man. Absolutely, man, definitely. But I mean, since the last time we spoke, Paul, like, so much has changed. I mean, not only just with your own situation, but politics in general. I mean, if it's been,
you could write
no, I don't think you could write a script that would come out like this. I think if you were to sit down and say to somebody even 6 months ago that we would be like this, you would have been like, fuck off, no chance, absolutely no chance. But
yeah,
for sure, mate. I mean, even just in the Labour Party, what do you know anything about the differences in the party since it's been Jeremy to Keir?
This was a bit of a transition period, hasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, and politically, it was a fairly expected outcome. I think, to be fair, like the front runners from the start came out in the end. You know, I was backing Angela Rayner for deputy, and was helping out on her campaign over the last few months until the start of April. And yeah, I mean, I think at this current point in time, because the leadership announcement happened during the lockdown, like there's not been the same sort of focus on what's this new leader going to be about, what's their agenda. It's purely been a somewhat muted start. So it's been all about, you know, how do you make an impact without coming across as opportunistic in the context of a massive crisis where the public's expecting politics to be put to one side as much as it can be. But then again, it betrays a somewhat simplistic understanding of what politics is, because ultimately all decisions are made or have an element of political judgment in them. I mean, you see things like the way that there's been manipulation of statistics and figures going on, particularly around testing, you know, to meet these targets and stuff. Then politics starts to creep into it. You see the demonisation of the education trade unions in the last week about schools returning and teachers saying it's not safe, medical professionals saying it's not safe, but clearly there's a financial interest from certain groups that influence politics who want to see this lockdown stop, regardless of the public health issues.
Yeah,
you know, so
I mean, the teaching. Sorry,
I was going to say inevitably, you know, there's going to be conflicts of interest based on class or those kind of tensions. You know.
Yeah.
I was going to pick up, just on the sort of teaching unions, because that's one that's kind of really grabbed my attention this week, is the overt sort of pressure that's now starting to be applied. And it feels like the unions and the teachers that they represent are just the latest, because we've had the build up to lockdown felt like there was a lot of, managing our expectations in the press that's then continued on through various stages of the lockdown, through the easing of measures in recent weeks. And it feels like what the government wants has been fairly clearly signposted in the press and then sort of chased after until such times as the public kind of pushes back, as was the case with, things like the furlough payments and stuff like that, because that 60% figure was in the air. It's the closest thing to a U-turn I've ever really seen this government do in years, because public pressure and public opinion very rarely actually sways them on these types of things when they've made these ideological decisions to cut people's money, cut people's benefits, put them under the pressures that they're under. Like, they don't ever really turn around. And I think the unions, got a bit of stick for, well, people are getting addicted to furlough and all this kind of nonsense, when actually folk are just trying to survive. And then a week later, when we've seen that with the teachers and the unions that represent them, and it's really kind of, it's quite worrying for me that, pressure's being exerted in this manner when the experts in these fields are actually saying, no, it's no time for schools, no, it's no time for easing the measures, no, it's no time for, money to be cut, etc. Like,
well, we had a culture war over Brexit, and this is totally throwing the chessboard over again. It's a totally new dimension in which we're discussing politics again, and it's very much on an economic level. And you're right, one thing it's betrayed is that the last 10 years of so-called austerity was a political choice. That it was based on a really disingenuous analysis of what the economy is and how it works. It's actually, if there's a recession or a crisis, then this government has to step in to pick up the slack. It's not a problem. The framing of it as addicted as somehow morally inferior to involve the state, or it's taxpayers' money, in inverted commas. In reality, money is money. It doesn't really matter whether it sits on the state's books or in the public and the private sector's books. It's a fixed amount of money that flows around the economy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The key thing is to keep it flowing. And that was the big problem with the lockdown, because if a company's business income stopped, if a person's income stopped, that's going to cause massive hardship very quickly. So it was obvious that the government had to step in and basically do CPR on the economy. You know what I mean? To keep the blood pumping, or keep the money pumping around the economy. And why would you then start to bleed out the country deliberately when it's trying to recover? By saying, oh, they're addicted to it. We need to get them off of this. It's like, that's a kind of perverse idea. And hopefully more people have realised that now, because it's like, 40% of the population is now on furlough or on public sector pay. So this idea that you're going to then, when the country really needs to turn Boris Johnson's phrase against them, rocket packs or jet, to boost the economy. The opposite thing to doing that is to then have another wave of austerity, public sector pay cuts. To turn all this bullshit narrative about valuing key workers when they're out clapping every Thursday, and then say, but we also want to cut your pay for the next 2 years.
Absolutely. It's a nightmare. I genuinely think this is some sort of psychological warfare that's been done not deliberately, but just because we've got a bunch of fucking idiots in charge that don't really know where to put their attention. And in one press conference, you've got the Chancellor saying we've got unlimited funds. Don't worry. Calm down, try to calm back at the start, but then coming out 2 weeks later and going, this is costing us too much. It's like, no fucking shit, it's costing us a lot of fucking money, but what are the alternatives? They can't give us an alternative other than get yourself back to work.
Well, exactly. And the best comparison is probably the end of the Second World War, because the main lesson from that was people had lived through the 1930s and the Depression, and they were like, we're not going back to that. And how come if we mobilised the whole country to fight a war and everybody was fully employed, can we not continue that idea after the war finishes? That's where the whole idea of creating a welfare state came out of. And that's why for 30 years, right up into the late 70s, the country grew very strongly. There was full employment, there was industrial growth. Because the country invested its way out of the economic crisis of the 30s and the Second World War, so that the national debt ended up becoming really small because the the country's actual wealth grew way beyond the debt. You know, this idea you need to pay back a debt.
Yeah.
It's, you know, the country can borrow from itself. It prints its own money. You know, and this idea there's a magic money tree. There is a magic money tree. It's called the Bank of England.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
That's it.
It can print. It can print money. And you know what? Even though debt's rising, the actual cost of borrowing is dropping. Because the safest thing to invest your money in right now is government bonds. So it's actually easier for the government to borrow, you know, 100 million on a 30-year term, and it's costing them barely less than 1% to borrow it. 5%, 0.5%, I think it is.
Yeah.
You know, so the government can easily borrow all this money. The economy can hopefully grow faster than the cost of the interest on the money, and then that's how you build back better.
That's the thing as well. The growth figures are going to spike pretty quickly when things start to move again. And obviously, I think the ONS did the last financial quarter recently, just up until the sort of lockdown point, and it had kind of shown a slowdown as a result of people obviously losing confidence as coronavirus spiked. But when the country actually gets moving again, when you base these types of things on like growth figures, the actual movement of money is going to show quite, you know, encouraging figures, you would imagine, when things actually get moving again.
I'd hope so, but again, the risk is, you know, the key thing is to keep workers attached to jobs and companies functioning. You know, and I kind of went into hibernation just now, so it's making sure as this comes back that all doesn't fall apart, that structure. You know, and that's why I'm worried about the government saying, "Oh, we're going to wean people off." It's like, no, you need to keep that oxygen supply going until such a time as everybody's happy that we're back on an even keel. And in fact, you know, when you've got 2 million people applied for universal credit, it's a ready-made infrastructure for like a basic income. You know, why not use that just to pump money into the people's pockets right away? You know, we spent if you remember back to the financial crash in 2008, it was the talk of quantitative easing where the Bank of England would print money and then basically buy bonds and give the money or transfer the money into banks like RBS to try and save them from collapse. But the money never left those banks. You know, loads of businesses collapsed. You know, the RBS in turn like destroyed loads of businesses, like basically forced them into bankruptcy, destroyed loads of jobs. So that method of trying to recover the economy didn't work as efficiently as it could, but it could work even better if you just bypassed all the banks and put the money into people's pockets directly. And people are going to, especially poorer people, are going to go out and spend that money. They're going to, you know, shops are going to thrive, businesses are going to thrive, and then that creates the buzz and the vibrancy you need to actually get things back up and running.
It's quite interesting. We've spoke UBI a number of times. We've had, another like yourself returning guest in Jamie Cook, who has come in a few times to speak about UBI with, and it's quite amazing how it's went for, again, even in the 6 months between us talking then and now, it's went for being quite a fringe idea that people had like serious reservations about it ever meaningfully working, to it being something that has really like become quite a mainstream idea. You've seen, you know, American presidential campaigns where UBI is the cornerstone of it. You know, it's been talked about all across Europe. You know, places in Scandinavia have brought in equivalents, and it's became this kind of party that I think is really an important lesson that we can learn in all of this, and it's how we come out of this on the other side. I think UBI definitely needs to be on the table for like a more in-depth and sort of widespread discussion in the UK. Like,
well, I agree with you. It's a combination. You know, a lot of people have got concerns from. I mean, it's a strange idea in the sense that it cuts across traditional left and right thinking, because you've got a lot of right wingers who propose it because they see it as a way of replacing benefits completely. And it'd be a flat rate thing, which is not necessarily what I agree with. But I think you create a kind of floor below which no one can drop below. But you still have targeted benefits to people who are like, you know, disabled or whatever, or get kids and so on. But no, you're right, because I mean, look at the point I was trying to make this week was about how most people in this country rely on some form of income to survive. And, you know, if you lose a job, for example, you're only going to be like 2 months away from being in difficulty. You know, and most folk are living two paychecks away from, you know, a problem. You know, so why would you have the country living like that? You know, Why would you have the country living with that kind of underlying stress? It's much better that people are able to bargain better for jobs. It raises the wages, it raises standards of jobs. And also, if you're looking at productivity, Britain's got one of the worst productivity rates in the world.
For sure.
If you're actually got people going, well, we're not going to work doing that daft job because it's a mind-numbing job. It encourages a business to say, right, let's automate that job or let's invest to make it more efficient. And that job's released into a more higher value activity.
Yeah.
So that's how you actually improve the economy overall. The reason why businesses don't invest is because it's cheaper to employ people on slave wages.
Yeah. Do you think that
exactly?
We've been talking quite a lot amongst me and Matt about the potential changes that could come out of the other side of this, because I work in the corporate world, and everybody has just been sent a laptop and can now do their job effectively from home. So when they try and get me to go back to the office for 40 hours a week, I'm maybe going to put my hand up and go, I don't want to be doing that, because I enjoy spending more time in the house, and my lunch hour I get to work out and I get to spend time with my girlfriend, and maybe not full time working from home, but maybe partially. Do you think that these are the types of changes that people will be able to say, listen, I want to do X, Y, and Z? Or do you think it will just come down to basically whether or not the company sees it as being profitable for them? Or because I know for the company that I work with, there's chat where they're saying, this is excellent because we no longer need to pay rent on a fucking office for people to go and sit in for 40 hours a week, when we can just make this investment now and take the opportunity to evolve.
Well, the risk is that, there's a number of issues thrown up by this, and I think you're right. You've seen like chief executive Barclays and stuff like that saying, this might change the whole future of office buildings and cities, that we might not need these massive office buildings anymore, skyscrapers and stuff. That there's a number of elements, maybe a psychological one. Social interaction is an important part of people's lives. They spend a large part of their day. If they're living in a city, you're cooped up in a small flat, working and sleeping and, living in the same space might become actually quite, psychologically difficult. That whilst it suits some people, it might not suit others. It's up to individuals. But I think you're right. There could be a much greater degree of flexibility around it. Obviously, some jobs require public interaction. Others aren't necessarily needing you to be interacting with the public or a customer. And I think there's also an element where companies might, like you say, try and cut overheads by passing the costs on to onto workers. So, your heating's on longer, your electricity's on longer. You're basically taking up the cost of the overheads from the company by paying your own bills more, because you're going to be living in your house more. So there's more cost involved with that. So there's maybe things there that might need to be taken into consideration. It's not just a straightforward, we're liberated from the desk. Obviously some jobs involve manufacturing, so you physically need to be there or whatever, But yeah, it's an interesting proposal. Obviously Barclays in the middle of building this massive new office building in the South Bank.
Yeah.
You wonder whether that's ever going to actually be completed.
It's an odd time to question the need for a massive office building when you're halfway through building a massive office building, to be fair, you know what I mean?
It's true.
Seems a bit strange. What type of leader do you think Keir Starmer's actually going to be? I mean, we can. I trust the news very little, but it seems to be almost he's getting painted as a centrist. He's a Blairite or whatever it might be, whatever smear. There's a lot of stuff about photos of him in his barrister uniform saying this is not a working class man. It's sort of making the assumption that people that are working class can't become barristers, which is kind of disrespectful to me.
Yeah, I don't buy into that narrative. I think there's a lot of bad faith. I'm like, let the guy get his arse in the seat. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Actually see what he can do, and it's difficult to actually showcase that when you're in the middle of a lockdown where you're just dealing with the bare bones of having to address the day-to-day tactics of this lockdown and what the government's doing. Clearly, increasingly alarming stuff that's going on. And what I'd say also is he's not been able to appoint a full team yet, or even get his full squad in to actually develop his positions on things. So it's all a bit still a bit scattergun. You know what I mean? But I think from his background, I worked with him. He was very good on Brexit. I thought he was very laser-like in his ability to sort of see where we needed to go on things. Like, most people were like looking towards him for some direction on that stuff. Obviously, it was a very technical, tactical issue in Parliament, all the knife-edge votes and all these amendments and all that sort of stuff that was going on last year. But I think he represents a pretty solid set of left-wing policies and principles. He comes from a background where he's been defending the rights of oppressed minorities. Doreen Lawrence, for example, backed his leadership campaign. He's got a hinterland that's fairly solid, in my opinion. And I just think it's been a bit unfortunate that there has been a slightly sectarian sort of attitude from certain factions in the party towards them, and I don't think they're entirely justified. But I can understand a degree of impatience. My instincts were, let's be more aggressive towards the Tories. Let's say why, let's get out of the traps quicker and be more aggressive against them.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, though, I take his point, though, he's like, you're not the person I need to convince to vote Labour. It's actually, you can't win unless you get Tories voting Labour.
Yeah.
And it's not about capitulating to them. It's just about playing a slightly less aggressive partisan hand, perhaps. But it's also like giving them enough rope to hang themselves. I don't know if you've been watching PMQs for the last few weeks, but my take is
Paul's been watching it.
My take is that he's basically beginning this kind of epic cross-examination of Boris Johnson that's going to last for months.
Yeah,
and he's basically he's letting them say these things that are going to slowly but surely destroy him. Because every week he's saying something that's totally a lie or a contradiction. And when this comes to a judicial inquiry, which it will, there's been thousands of deaths. This stuff's all going to get laid out, and all the government papers are going to get investigated. And if he's been found to have, willfully denied advice, ignored and gerrymandered and mismanipulated figures and so on, he'll have to resign as Prime Minister, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think that's maybe the longer term goal here,
Playing the long game, which would be the smart game. A lot of what I seen for PM's Qs last week, I think I watched it, was Boris crumble under not a lot of pressure. I mean, he looked like a rabbit. Sorry, mate?
The guy's a massive bluffer, and to some extent, it suited him to just kind of go in with his gang of kind of Tory bullies and just like monster Jeremy Corbyn all the time. And it just became this like, there was never any meaningful exchange of views there.
Yep.
It was just entrenched positions,
I think this was something that Sean McDonald was tweeting about. He was saying that when you look at Boris Johnson without all the bluff and blusteries, cronies behind him, it's just clear how much of what he does is just a total act. Even as he was answering questions this week to Starmer, you could see him like looking about as if he was punctuating his speech in the exact same way that he always has done with his gestures, but there was just nothing there for it to actually relate to. And it shows you how kind of like robotic and kind of just ridiculous the guy is in that respect. Like, well, I think for
people have seen it coming. I mean, people have seen it coming. The guy isn't this kind of jovial clown. He's not like that. It's a much more sinister and contrived kind of pantomime act that he performs. I've seen him with like perfectly normal hair, and then he comes in behind the Commons, like into behind the speaker's chair, and he like deliberately ruffles his hair up to make him into this character.
Mm-hmm.
And then because it's really like quite sinister.
Yeah.
But, I mean, you've heard people like Max Hastings who employed them at the Telegraph and stuff like that, saying this guy is not employable. He's a charlatan. He's a liar. He's a bluffer. He made up quotes. He got sacked from the newspaper. So like, it's amazing that in any other context that would have been a fatal like situation for any like.
Should be,
like your credibility's been destroyed. You've not got a career. It's amazing that he can just brass it out because like whatever, I don't know what it is. I think there's just this kind of weird aura about him that people are just sycophants. Even just the creepiness of the fact that he left his wife, who was like suffering from cancer, to go out with a woman who was like the same age as me. You know what I mean? Now she's pregnant and moved into Downing Street.
Yeah,
and it's like. I mean, in any other world, that would. I mean, imagine Jeremy Corbyn had done that. It would have been destroyed in the press.
Absolutely, mate.
I mean, it's essentially like the classic political scandal, isn't it? Like, it's the type of Perfumo type nonsense that has taken the careers of thousands of politicians all across the world since time began. You know what I mean? Like, and it's just, just bounced off them.
Yeah, it seems to have just become so punch drunk, like from scandals, that nothing has any consequences anymore.
Yeah, I agree, man. I think that the Trump thing in America is almost a very similar thing, where everything that he does wrong almost reinforces his support, where his support are like, but we love that. We love that he's a bit of an idiot. And it's, I think that when Trump became president in America, a lot of people were saying this is a dangerous thing for us to have this guy in charge, because it like you're saying, it almost like numbs you to, well, he did this, and he comes out and he just brasses it, just goes, and what? Or just goes, aye, whatever, and just ignores it and moves on to the next thing. And his supporters are actually like, yes, that's what we want. We want this guy who kind of thinks the same way that I do and acts the same way that I want to act. And I think Boris has been part of that. Do you know what I mean?
I think actually the parallels with the rise of authoritarianism is quite alarming, and I don't want to go down the old trope about, fascism and all that sort of stuff, but like the reality is that if democratic institutions and cultures started to get undermined very fatally, which they kind of did through the early 2000s, Iraq, the MP's expenses scandal, the church sex scandals and stuff, all these kind of institutions that underpinned authority in society were kind of burned down basically, and people there was a license to just despise or be very cynical about leadership or authority. And I think that opens up a vacuum where like absolute charlatans, populists can come in, and they basically by basically position themselves as acting against authority or any norm, they're able to reinforce their position. And I think that's perhaps something to do with it.
That's why you have guys like Farage into it. Exactly that tactic.
It's off the back of the financial crash as well. There was this whole system that caused poverty, and people are looking for scapegoats and people to blame, and becomes it's the European Union, whatever, let's just break away from it. It's taking all this money off of us and stuff, and it becomes easy to point to something and go, it's they're the cause of the problem. It's a bit like what Trump's doing with China,
I think to come back to Keir Starmer, but just I acknowledge that it has been a bit of a ropey start, but primarily because of everything that's going on in the world just now. It's going to be impossible to really get a lot of traction straight out the the trap.
Yeah, I mean it's one of these things where you see on Twitter lots of takes and stuff, and you're like, oh, that's it, it's a betrayal, and it's like you're kind of like you understand how politics and parties work. Like it involves lobbying, campaigning, and influencing leaders and decision makers. It's not like everybody's programmed like the Borg to just immediately agree to whatever the leader decides. And it's like, for example, on the housing policy that came out about, it wasn't, there was clearly flaws in that housing policy announcement about the 2 years to pay back a rent arrears, and you're like, and I was just like, that's not really thought through. I can understand what they were doing.
Aye.
Like they're trying to get the Tories to agree to something that's not as shit as what they've got, but they would never agree to what we would do if we were in charge, if you know what I mean. I'm like, why are we trying to, there's an extent where you go, why are we trying to, flatter the Tories like that? Let's just call it out for what it is.
Aye. And my first impression was a wee bit kind of, as you say, coming out and being like, we're going to kind of agree with the government was, to paraphrase, was a bit of a kind of slip. But I've enjoyed looking at and reading through the PMQ stuff. I think it is important now more than ever that the government has somebody who's actually going to hold them to account. So, I'm definitely grateful for that respect. I think the one that kind of probably has left me with questions out of all it, and I don't know if you're in a position to talk about this or whatever. We had the leaked report for accusations in 2017 that potentially guys at the HQ may have spiked Corbyn's chances of winning, and it kind of was a big story for a couple of days. It seems to have kind of calmed down, and I don't know if maybe the Labour guys are just getting their ducks in a row to really address it properly, or what's going on with it. Is that something that you've got an opinion on?
I mean, it's a big cultural change in the Labour Party in the last 15 years, you know what I mean? mean, it's funny, isn't it? Because like when parties become a dominant force in politics, they attract careerists, and they attract kind of people who just want to jump on a bandwagon to advance themselves. You know what I mean? And I think through the latter stages of the kind of Blair governments, there was an element where if you were a young graduate and a young kind of person, you wanted to get involved in the Labour Party because that was where you would go in politics. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And it's the same like with the SNP now. There's loads of like young professionals that join it. It's it's success breeds success. You know, you want to back a winner. You know what I mean? So there's an element of that in every political party in the modern era. You know what I mean? And I think it was a hangover from those days where the politics might have changed in 2015 with Corbyn, but the actual kind of permanent staff of the party in many ways hadn't.
The machinery.
You know, and I think there was definitely a sort of hostility, institutional hostility by that group towards the leadership. You know, and I was quite shocked to see the extent to which that manifested itself though in those reports. You know what I mean? Even I didn't realise that it was so, such an effort and sabotage. You know, I was pretty dismayed. It was pretty dismaying reading, to be honest with you. But and again, you think, well, in reality, we were only 5,000 or 6,000 votes, I think, away from winning.
Yeah.
You know, if they'd been in the right seats at the right places, we'd actually had enough to turn over the Tories. Yeah. And I think, what a tragedy. But that's, I mean, then I didn't understand why people then responded by saying, "I've had enough, I'm leaving the party." So I'm like, well, you're just kind of reinforcing their position.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You need to be able to have people in to make sure the right candidates get into the right positions and so on. You know, otherwise you're just surrendering any control you had and go and join the Greens or something like that. The Greens are never going to be in government. You know what I mean? So, you know what I mean? Like, be part of the project to influence it. You know, rather than just saying, "No, it's not pure enough for me."
I think it's always been one of the strengths of the Labour Party for me is that it's always encouraged a broad church and different opinions are welcome and maybe not always, people find consensus or whatever. But I think the biggest challenge for Starmer now is taking this information and what's going on in the last couple of years and actually pulling that church sort of back together and moving it on the one direction. I'm hoping that he can do it.
Labour needs to get to a situation where its collective desire to win is greater than its hate for each other. And it's like, and it's a bit like, it's a bit mind blowing from my point of view that some people would rather the Tories win than we won, for the sake of destroying the faction that was in charge at the time, And I think if you're in that situation, that's pretty grim, And I hope that if anything, Keir's shrewd enough to be able to bring the parties, groups together, the trade unions, the different societies, and various different factional groups, to say, look, now is the time for us to get a Labour government in power, and actually focus on destroying the Tory party. Because I think if that willpower is greater than any disdain that's within the party, which has always been there, it grew up in a kind of messy coalition of left groups in the early 1900s to try and put socialists into parliament. You know what I mean? It's never been a kind of corporate organisation. You know what I mean? Like the Tory party is, where they can just swipe out all these MPs that are, like, just because the leader doesn't like them, like Ken Clarke and all that. Like you saw Boris Johnson. The leader of the Labour Party would never be able to deselect people like that. So I think it's kind of getting into that mindset of the left in the 90s was so depressed by 18 years of Tory rule that they agreed, like Blair's maybe the guy that will get us into power, and then at least we can take it from there. And obviously there was successes and failures, some large and some small, you know what I mean? And they can chew over the legacy of that government, but there's clearly things to point to that were good and massive failures as well, what I mean?
Yeah, we spoke last week where I posed the question to Matt, like, would you be happy with Keir Starmer if it was Tony Blair minus Iraq? And I think that I would genuinely be happy with that at this point. Like, I think
the thing is, like, when people complain about Starmer, he tried to take Blair to court over the Iraq war. You know,
these are the things that we don't hear though, because the media don't put that out there for people. I mean, there seems to be this sort of strange thing that's happened where the media, and specifically in the UK and America, have managed to shatter the left through this identity thing that's happening, where it's about very specific things. So if you believe in one thing, that's okay, but if you don't believe in the same entirety sort of thing that I believe in, then I can't be associated with you. We're getting put into these different wee factions, whereas the right have managed to do what you just said there, the left did in the 90s, where they rally behind these people that they see being able to get them into power, and then we'll take it for there. But I don't see that working, especially I think the right in America has made a big mistake with Trump, and I think that they're making the same mistake here with Boris, where these people are going to get into power and they're going to take full advantage of that, instead of the right being able to sort of manipulate it and make it whatever it is that they want to make it.
No, it's a good point. And you also can't underestimate the Tory party's desire to cling on to power, you know. And a big part of it is actually Labour fundamentally looking at the system that exists in the country. You know, I was having a chat with some colleagues the other night about this and saying, you know, I think in the last 100 years, Labour's been in power for 34 years. You know, the current system exists to perpetuate Tory rule, you know. So my view would be in the next elections, Labour should go into agreeing to change the proportional representation, because actually across the UK, a majority of people vote for the Greens, the Liberal Democrats, SNP and Labour. You know what I mean? So like in Parliament, if it was PR, there would be a majority of seats there reflecting progressive political views, you know what I mean? And yet we end up with Tory majorities. So, you know, I would actually say maybe now is the time to confront that reality and say, look, we need to actually gain 140 seats in 2024, which is bigger than Blair got in 97. So it's a massive task, right?
Yeah.
My thinking would be, do you do a deal with the Liberal Democrats and the Greens? It might be more difficult with the SNP because we're like in competition for the same seats, but you might do a deal with the Greens and the Lib Dems in England and say, stand aside in these seats where you split the vote and the Tories win, and that might get us enough over the line. But the quid pro quo is to agree to PR if we get that government.
Yeah,
that might be something that needs to be thought about in the next 4 years. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
It's going to be impossible to get the Tories to agree to that without an election win, to be fair. They're never going to vote against their own self-interest in that respect. But I'd love to see the more progressive parties. I think there was an opportunity to do it, you know, through, in recent years. And it's one of the things that we need to be more open to. If we're all against the Tories and their policies, then, you know, there is room to work together and compromise on the issues that you have in common.
The Scottish Parliament kind of was set up with that idea, but we're culturally still in that mindset of the winner takes all. We've never been able to, and even you get these things in councils where it's like, oh, you've done a deal with them, and it's like, well, you know, how do we get into a position in politics where we're more chilled out about collaboration, you know, and it's something that's seen as something that taints or undermines your credibility as a party.
Yeah.
You know, and I think there's a difficult cultural issue in our country where it's all about, you know, you need to conquer the other side and destroy them completely, and then you rule with an iron fist for however many years, you know.
It's not exactly the most healthy approach. I definitely have always been a fan of proportional representation. I'd love it to be something that comes in a more sort of widespread. I know obviously we had a referendum on it that, well, it was an alternative vote or something like that. It didn't really pan out.
It was half-arsed, you know. And it was classic, like Nick Clegg just kind of selling out to David Cameron. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think I wouldn't even have a referendum on it. I would just go, it's in our manifesto. We're going to bring in who had a referendum on first past the post. You know, when did that get agreed?
Yeah.
You know? So I would just go, fuck it. You know. Let's just.
You want to vote us in? Seems fair.
How do you feel the Scottish government have performed during the crisis?
Well, I mean, it's an unveil. Who saw it coming? You know what I mean? And it's hard. It's easy to sit here and go, "Oh, that should have been done. This should have been done." And I think we aren't in possession of all the information that was available to the First Minister or the Prime Minister. You know what I mean? We're only looking through the keyhole here about the full full array of advice that was being given. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So it's difficult at this stage in the game to sort of make blanket statements about failures and so on. All you can do is judge on evidence, and I think, you know, I'm sure everybody's been motivated to a greater or lesser extent by the right intentions. I'd certainly say more so in the Scottish Government. I think Boris Johnson and the Tories might have been more compromised by their willingness not to harm business.
Yep.
You know, and that would have been a bigger consideration for them. They probably had lobbyists in their ear going, "Oh, we don't want to shut down stuff because it would harm our, you know, activity." I don't think that would be as much of an issue necessarily in the Scottish Government, but I think there's obviously things that have come out like that Nike conference, and you're like, well, what was going on there, you know? And also like stuff around why aren't we ramping up testing? Why was there such a sort of groupthink at the start around the way things were going, you know? And I do wonder about mapping out how the decision making was occurring through like SAGE, this kind of secretive group of scientists, and then like the public chief health officers and so on, and then to government ministers. You know, it'd be interesting to map how that information was actually functioning at the time.
Yeah.
What sort of advice?
Especially with guys like Cummings in the mix.
Well,
how much it was being filtered through his lens would be extremely interesting to see.
Yeah, and I think, you know, the thing about protect the NHS, but that involved mass discharging into care homes. Was there any consideration about the impact that might have in terms of seeding the virus in care homes? You know, you do wonder whether these things weren't looked at. You know, what strikes me is that like even poor countries that have had experience of these pandemics before, like Vietnam, have responded with a far greater effectiveness than we have. You know, and we had a slightly racist approach to it to start with, but not necessarily consciously. I think it was unconsciously racist, where we were like, "Oh, this is something that happens in the Far East." You know, it's SARS. You know, it's like Hong Kong's war. You know, you always see them walking around with face masks on. You know, there was an element of that where it's not going to come to here.
Yeah.
You know, and
I think the last two petered out. I think when the last two, the SARS and the swine flu broke, we were told that it had the potential to be as big as COVID-19 has proven to be. But with those two kind of petering out short of the line, I think it did leave us with at least a level of complacency. It's just, you know, another one of these viruses for that part of the world.
And obviously 10 years of austerity hasn't helped because we've had a threadbare care sector. But even things like my pal's been working in the hospital of Queen Elizabeth, and like there's been no stockpiles of PPE. There was like exercises carried out by the government like 6 or 7 years ago, planning for a pandemic, although it was based on a flu pandemic, admittedly. But even then, things like, you know, stockpiles of gowns, of protective equipment, of visors and things like that, these should have been all in warehouses ready to go. You know what I mean? They should have been kept in date. You know, they should be refreshed every few years. But obviously, when you've got budget cuts, the first thing you're going to do is, well, this stuff's lying in a warehouse and there's no obvious need for it, so we'll get rid of that before cutting stuff that's more immediate. You know, that's the problem with austerity. You know, they talk about making efficiencies. You know, first thing you're going to do is, well, why are we paying hundreds of thousands of pounds for this warehouse full of stuff that we're not using? You know,
the short-term thinking, and that's disastrous, though, isn't it? I mean, that's just so like short-term that it's scary that people that are in charge of the money that we're talking about and the amount of people that we're talking about are that so short-sighted that they can't see past their own 4 years or whatever. I think that's a big issue.
My thinking would have been, we've been so hot to globalisation. You know, look at the whole thing of our ventilators, for example. Like, I think going, you know, in the future will be like, there'll be national plans now for like, if we need ventilators, there'll be companies ready to go with the designs and they'll be able to switch to it very quickly. There'll be like, there'll be protocols developed for like how to plan to expand hospital capacity. You know, there'll be protocols around storage of PPE and how that's gotten out. You know, the reality is we basically were caught with our trousers down big time. You know, and there's no getting away from that reality. You know, and who's been in power for the last 10 years? You know, so I think that needs to all come out in the wash. You know, there's no way, shirking responsibility. Okay, we can all claim we didn't see it coming, but there were plans in place that weren't adhered to.
I think when you look at Panorama, they made it fairly clear straight off the bat that the entire world has been told for pretty much the last 15 years that this is the the big event that everybody needs to be effectively planning for. So as much as, let's not even just say this government, as much as any government might turn around and say, look, this came out of nowhere, I'm a bit reluctant to kind of accept that myself. As much as we didn't know that it was going to happen this month or this quarter or whatever it is, the science has been there for 15 years telling them this is the one, this is what you need to be ready for. And it is quite telling that so many governments, and not even just those, but PPE is something that people are struggling to get a hold of all over the world. You know what I mean? Like, there's stories that have been stocked up in Chinese docks and they don't have enough shipment containers to move them at this point. You know what I mean? So it's quite odd that with 15 years' notice, so many got it so wrong. I
think you're right, and I suppose that necessity becomes the mother of invention, doesn't it? And to an extent, like you were saying with working from home, the technologies might have existed, but the impetus didn't exist. And I think this is going to change culturally a lot of things. It's a bit like one of those seminal events like 9/11 or whatever, that just changes the whole next decade, and what happens thereafter. And we might find like the Spanish flu in 1918, it just spontaneously burns out. It's just went through the population at such a rate that it's then burnt out as a virus. The transmission has, and that happens before we even have a vaccine. The Spanish flu came in 2 big waves, and the worry is, coming out of this lockdown, are we then just going to set ourselves up for another even bigger wave?
We're already seeing reports of the R number rising. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so it is kind of concerning that the protocols and the efforts haven't been put in place, but that's because there's been a very free market thinking about globalization, offshoring. We don't need national systems in place to deal with things. We don't need the same sort of central planning that we might have had in the past. Even around like mobilising reservists and things. They don't have any reservists anymore really to deal with like expanding capacity in the NHS. All these things were dismantled after the Cold War. You know what I mean? So I think there's been a big wake up call for like how you create national resilience.
Certainly hope it is anyway.
Well, let's hope so.
So, see, to move away, well, I don't know if it is moving away, depends on how you answer. Seen obviously in the last few days, you've been out and about in the press pretty actively talking about, your changes since, losing the recent election, which obviously I was sorry about. And I think there was talk about your experience in applying for universal credit. This is something that is something that I was I'm quite surprised at. I don't think most people expect to hear that maybe somebody with an MP's background is then a universal credit claimant. But at the same time, it makes perfect sense in the current context. But like, it seems as though there's been quite a fairly predictable bit of fucking backlash for idiots on, the yes side of things and whatnot. Like, I had a wee, I know you tweeted it out as well, kind of like check the state of some of these guys, and I actually did, and like, some of them are an embarrassment. It's like, how do you create this progressive care in Scotland when you can't actually show human compassion for somebody? It's a weird one.
I think the problem is culturally politics have become more like a football game. It's almost as entrenched as the old firm. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And there's that same sort of current of bitterness through it, where we've gone away from the idea. It's politics as a culture war. You know what I mean? It's not politics as I've listened to this position and I think that's all right. It's not politics as an exchange of ideas based on what's best for the community. It's more fundamental about identity and all these kind of bigger questions that make it a much visceral and emotional thing. And I find that maybe the coronavirus might change our culture in that respect, where we're looking at things with a less simplistic sort of identity politics brand. You know what I mean?
Less tribal. I certainly hope so. I mean, I know as well you were tweeting out that your kind of experience as you've been going through the process, and it's something we've had previous guests discuss with, Alex Tiffin and stuff like that, who's quite a prominent sort of universal credit blogger and stuff like that over the years.
I mean, to be fair, I mean, my extent of interaction with it was helping all of it, in various different ways, whether it was through getting sanctioned or getting ruled fit to work despite being obviously unwell. These kind of ridiculous outcomes that people were having, or we're transitioning from the old benefits onto the new system and end up massively out of pocket and stuff like that. And also just the quite punitive way it's designed. Like it's designed psychologically to sort of deter you from using it.
Yes.
But funnily enough, even in the last 8 weeks, they've had to simplify the system because it crashed under the weight of people applying for it. So my interaction with it was actually fairly straightforward because as far as I've progressed in the process so far, it's doing an online application and then firing it in.
Right.
It was a bit as complex as doing your car insurance. You know what I mean?
Okay.
So it was actually fairly straightforward. But that's not to say it's not difficult for lots of people who don't have IT literacy. A millennial, aren't physically and mentally pretty healthy. Do you know what I mean? But it also doesn't go to say that the system as it existed up until the start of the crash wasn't worse. All I've done is fill out this form and then I'm waiting on someone phoning me back, which hasn't yet happened. So I could encounter a lot more difficulties with it. So I just think part of it was about removing the stigma from it because a lot of people were like locally saying, I'd never apply for it, I'm too good for it. A lot of people also were quite intimidated by it because they've heard all these horror stories.
Yeah.
So part of it for me was like, well, at least start the ball rolling. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's not that difficult to start the ball rolling and then just see how you get on with it.
It's quite odd that people sometimes feel that way. I mean, it's like when, I've been redundant in various points over the last sort of 5 or 6 years, moving between jobs and whatnot. Things like job seekers allowance. If you're previously you'd be unemployed, you'd go and what used to be the dole or whatever, and that became so stigmatized that a lot of people themselves will say, "Look, I'd just rather concentrate on trying." And it's weird that we think that something that we have contributed to and we're entitled to is this burden. Like we pay for it through our taxes, we pay for it through our work. Like it's ours. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and it's self-defeating to think otherwise. Because it's in no one's interest to see in financial hardship, as a community.
No.
So, going back to that point about UBI, of course, but I think my thinking was really, I've been lucky enough to have had basically a source of income since I was like 14, doing around, I've had part-time jobs at school, at uni, and then went into a graduate job and I've been continuously employed up until the point where I lost my seat, So it was a fairly novel experience at 31 to suddenly find, having been in fairly decent jobs for all the 20s, to now be in this kind of situation. And then when this lockdown hits, you know what I mean? So it became logical to me because I was like, well, I might as well take advantage of this 3-month mortgage holiday that they've got. I was thinking, well, actually looking at my finances, I do qualify for UC, so why wouldn't I apply for it?
Absolutely.
That was my thinking. It's not that I'm like, and a lot of people obviously aren't in the luxurious position where they've got a bit of savings that will see them through the next 4 weeks or whatever. A lot of people need immediate upfront payment. You know what I mean? So whilst I'm not as panicking about like I need it now sort of thing, I'm just saying, well, why wouldn't you set the ball rolling to try and get help? Obviously I'm still kind of like seeing what's happening. People are like, well, maybe we can sort you out with something. But I'm like, well, if anybody, the first, it's almost like a fire drill. If you find yourself out of work, the first thing you do is apply for it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't see why you would hold off. You know what I mean?
Well, my girlfriend's self-employed, and because the self-employed payment took until she's still not got it, but she's got her email telling her what she gets or whatever. She applied for universal credit, and it was the conversation that we had to have with each other where it was like, there's nothing wrong with you applying for this. And I think it's because of the way that the media portrays people that claim benefits. It just makes people really not want to be put into that sort of stigmatized position of like, oh, I'm going to need to go and do this.
Yeah, I mean, it's not something that's a lifestyle. It's not something that's sustainable as a lifestyle. I mean, the Tories have certainly made sure of that.
Yeah.
And I think
Nobody's
psychologically,
pure. Yes, my £87 came in the day. Let's party. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I had more as a student coming in. You know what I mean? But like, my point is, it takes the edge off things. It's better than nothing, and I don't imagine it'll be a long, hopefully only a matter of weeks before something gets sorted out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I was just trying to make the point that if your ex-MPs having to do it, you know, most people are from a working class background in Scotland. You need a salary to live off of, or some form of steady income. That's, you know, we're not all capitalists who live off of, you know, income and investments in the stock market, you know. So, you know, we're going to need a salary to live off of. And that's my definition of what working class is. People often go, it doesn't mean anything anymore. I was like, well, the definition for me of working class, or if you want to blur it a bit, lower middle class, is if you need a waged or salaried income to survive. You know what I mean? And I suppose the definition between, you know, difference between working class and lower middle class might be to the extent to which you have like a disposable income to go on holidays and stuff like that. You know, but you know, the fundamental economics of it is that, you know, the Duke of Buccleuch isn't going to be applying for fucking universal credit, is it? You know what I mean?
Definitely not.
So,
why do you think then? Why do you think your intention? Because that totally makes sense to me, and I'm actually like really like glad that somebody in your position actually was, I'm going to put myself out there and be like, I'm claiming this, for a way of saying to people, you should absolutely be fucking claiming for this. If you qualify, go and do it. Like, I think that's great and like well done to you. But why do you think it was so misinterpreted as like, oh, cry me a river? You look at this. This is somebody out here. Well, there's people in worse positions, and not the intent that you intended it.
Yeah, it's just bad faith, really. You know, you're going to get that from just, you know, but I hope that the broader message got through. You know, maybe it was you know, I hadn't planned it to be some great media thing. You know, I just was like, oh shit, I'm actually like going to do this. So I was like, well, I might as well say on Twitter, you know, I've actually just done a UC application. You know, I didn't expect it to go into these articles and things like that. But I just did. And afterwards, I had a couple of phone calls from journalists who were like, oh, would you talk about this? And I was like, well, yeah, you know, if you want me to offer like a context to it, yeah. But no, I think you're right about, you know, it was a shame that people were thinking it was some sort of attention-seeking exercise. You know, it really wasn't my main intention with it. My main intention was to
lead by example.
Well, it was to try and say to him, you know, I was trying to give people confidence that it's not that big a deal. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And obviously, people are going to read into it saying, it's an attention seeker. I don't think it's a classic way of seeking attention to sort of illustrate vulnerability like that, you know. So
no, I can't imagine that's how other people would approach it. You know what I mean? Like, I would say tune it out if you've not already done that. You know what I mean? Like, because it was way beyond a personal attack. It was they were attacking the character that they've created in their head of you, rather than like anything that you've ever actually sort of said or done. Really, you know what I mean?
There was people posting footage for Question Time in like in 2014 and stuff. It was like, what the fuck is going on here? Like,
it was not a good look, was it? On them.
The funny thing is that they didn't see the actual hypocrisy in what they were saying. You know, they were calling me a red Tory. I'm like, the very you, by your criticism of people who are in this situation, are the very, you know, you're actually being a Tory by
you're benefit shaming me. This isn't happening the other way around.
Yeah, I just found it very odd, you know. But it just shows you how a lot of politics is more about emotion than logic. You know what I mean?
Seen quite a bit of that today. This is almost word for word the same conversation I had online with somebody before we went live this afternoon. It was about the Glasgow Green anti-lockdown protests and how sort of kind of really ridiculous these are. You know, and what I'd said to one of our followers was like, I kind of feel sorry for these people because, you know, they're being told that their emotions are more valuable than fact, and that once that's actually bedded in with people, they're then having their emotions toyed with, and the results are that people are getting the wrong end of the stick intentionally. People are out protesting stuff that really doesn't make any sense. And there are a number of things in recent weeks that have kind of been almost kind of outbursts of a very similar thing. And it's that, as you say, people are thinking emotionally because they're told that's where their value is that they can be and say and do whatever they want as long as they feel that that's their right to do it, whether it's actually true or no. You know what I mean?
No, I think there's been a big problem with manipulation of reality for a lot of people, which has been fairly cynical. You know, we talk about the plague of fake news online, and you know, if you're lacking human contact or interaction, you're locked in a room 24 hours a day with their only form of interface with the rest of the world being, conspiracy theories on YouTube or
your echo chamber.
It could very quickly, destroy your frame of reference.
Yeah.
And if you've been constantly fed this idea that the virus has been communicated through 5G and all this sort of shit, which is just mind blowing that is action, But it's a bit like, you're like, Christ, this must have been what it's like to have lived through the witch trials and stuff like that, just this superstitious culture,
Good comparison.
Just like this must have been what it was like to have actually seen this kind of stuff going on, because I thought maybe since we've had like industrial society where there's been an education system and stuff, and there's been very clear ways of communicating to the population through newspapers and radio and television. It's maybe since we've had social media that this sort of thing's exploded as an issue. There's always been conspiracy theorists on the fringes, like aliens and UFOs and stuff like that. But it's never been as sort of big as it seems to be now. Or maybe it's just it gives it more of a platform than we ever realised.
I mean, the press last week went to a quote for David Icke on the First Minister, and you're like, in what world did somebody be like, let's go and ask David Icke what he thinks of Nicola Sturgeon? You're like,
I think that's also a symptom of the real decline in the print media.
Yeah.
The structures of editing, and writing in the press has really declined. So there isn't the same sort of quality checking going on. Some desk journalist who's straight out of uni can just put an write up on the Herald website, without much of a check. So I'm worried that that's become a problem.
Yeah,
also the real scrutiny in journalism's lacking now as well, because you're often getting stuff that's just press releases cut and pasted, and there's nobody sitting there going, "Is this just bullshit I'm being fed? Maybe I should dig into this a bit," because nobody's got time, because they're just having to put up 5 or 10 stories to make their quota each day.
I mean, we had that in relation to this meeting with STV. I think STV got a bit of a shouting down online because this Glasgow Green protest had been kind of tweeted about by them kind of verbatim, and somebody was like, well, hold on a minute, you've kind of just promoted this rather than questioned the need for it. And to their credit, the head of STV News actually came out and tweeted himself saying, look, we did not give this the level of scrutiny that it required. We've deleted the tweet and kind of moved on. So that's one of the very few examples we've actually seen it in action, but it's few and far between, exactly as you say.
It becomes press as gossip rather than actual journalism, and that's the worry,
There's a big issue with that. I think there's another big issue as well, where the conspiracy theories on the fringes of things post 60s through to like the 90s, things like UFOs, aliens and then we get declassified documents that come out 10, 15, 20 years later that actually confirm that they were real things, and now we've got people going, well, that means flat earth is real, and that means that QAnon is real, because look at all these things that we believed in the past. It's almost like confirming their bias towards the conspiracy, whereas it's like, well, a government having advanced technology and a plane is completely different to them lying to you and the moon being a fucking hologram, mate. Like, that's like two different things.
Yeah, it's a logical fallacy, isn't it? That this is true, therefore this is true. It's but it's just something he's robustly challenged. Unfortunately, I just find it mentally exhausting on Twitter to engage with a lot of people now. It's I tend to be quite discerning. I mean, people I've been ridiculed for blocking lots of people on Twitter. My rule just is, if you're annoying me shite, you get blocked. And, I don't really need to justify that more than anything else. If you're vexatious, engaging in bad faith, or like insulting, then fuck you. I don't care. You're getting blocked. I don't need to deal. My fucking life's stressful enough without having to deal with that shit every day.
Absolutely.
So
you're just inviting in, aren't you? Otherwise, I'm the same as you.
I'm like, after I blocked thousands of accounts who were like that, these bot accounts or just these nutters that sit in their bedroom with their in their pants tweeting all sorts of shit at you. Actually, my
kind of describes both me and Paul. Nutters in my room tweeting shit at you.
I think we all have our moments, but like My point is that after doing that, my mental health's far better in engaging in these platforms, because you're not, and everybody's like, you'll have a thick skin. See, if you're just getting wall-to-wall abuse 24 hours a day, it's obviously going to be having a psychological effect, whether unconscious or consciously, so it's better just to get rid of it completely,
I completely agree, mate. Completely agree.
And occasionally, like, things that you found people that you've blocked to, you actually go back and check and say, it was just that kind of argument at the time, but I've unblocked them now and it's been fine, but my view is, Twitter is just such a vicious sewer, that if you're going to have any sort of with whatever it is, 17,000 followers, you're going to end up getting just totally bombarded unless you have a really strict approach to dealing with Zoomers on it,
Absolutely, mate. I used the analogy with Matt before, where engaging with some nutter on Twitter's like engaging with the same thing as engaging with a nutter on the street. If somebody was walking up and down Sauchiehall Street screaming at the top of their voice, you wouldn't run up and scream back, or you wouldn't go up and try and have a rational conversation. You would stay clear.
Well, often these wee fannies would never do it in person. You know what I mean? It's easy to act the big man. It's a bit like having road rage. It's easy to shout abuse at somebody when you're sitting in a car and they can't hear you. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
It's like it's fine when you're hiding behind whatever fake.
Like a soul-tired avatar.
You know what I mean? Like Sawyer Alba 1314, whatever it might be. But just there's a certain type. There's different categories. There's either the kind of Brexit gammons, or there's the kind of unicorn nationalist.
We're quite popular with Billy Loyal 72s.
Well, there's a few of them as well. There's a few of them that were they kind of had a go as well over Corbyn and stuff like that. So
you can't win.
You can't win. You're getting it from every angle.
Absolutely, mate. So what's next for you, man? Like, what's
right about myself?
Is that what you're going to say there, man? It's almost like we shared notes, isn't it?
I know, like we're just on the same page.
I mean, we'll just need to wait and see. Like I said, there might be an opportunity to do some campaigning work with the party over the next few months, but everything's kind of gummed up just now because of the furlough scheme and everything. So just keeping an open mind to what to do. Obviously, I only get 2 years as an MP, so I'm kind of championing the bit to get back into politics as soon as I can.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So I'm more likely than not attempt to run for the Glasgow regional list for the Labour Party. The constituencies.
2021.
Yeah, the constituencies locally have selected their candidates, so the regional list is open. But I don't think the process for that's been agreed yet. It's probably going to be towards the end of the year, I think. So how that works is basically there's about 5,000 Labour Party members in Glasgow, and they'll get balloted, asked who do they want to rank on the regional list. I think there's like 7 spots, and looking at the polling, we're probably looking at like 3, 4. If we're really turning it around 5, we might win a constituency. So that changes the calculus again. So
okay.
I'll give it a crack, and obviously there's also the option of back running again for my constituency, Glasgow North East in 2024 when the election comes up. So I definitely think I found my vocation being an MP. I really enjoyed it. It's challenging, obviously, but I think it's one of those jobs where it didn't feel like a job, if you know what I mean. It was just more like a kind of lifestyle. Mm-hmm. So I definitely feel like I found my groove in it. But even though that particular parliament was super stressful given the whole carry on with Brexit and all that. But I think actually if you had a bit of a more settled period in politics, it'd be a really good thing to get into.
It'd be nice if we had a month where just everything was online, just one like 4-week period where somebody was like, right guys, like time out, we're just taking the next week off, you know what I mean? Like, because I think when you were last in, Parliament had essentially been furloughed to facilitate some of Johnson's nonsense. And what you've come back with the whole nation furloughed. So interesting times.
It's wild. So definitely through the looking glass, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But like I say, 10 years ago, if you'd said I'd be an MP, I'd have laughed at you, so who knows what the next 10 years might hold,
Absolutely, mate. That's just a good thing for you to be open-minded in general, because look at what's been going on the last sort of 8 weeks. I mean, again, life's very unpredictable, and I think that there'll be a lot of changes in people's mentality when we come out the other side of this. So good luck to you in whatever it is that you're deciding to go and do.
Well,
thanks very much for coming in.
It's been good to see you again, man. I hope you're keeping well and keep in touch.
Aye, used to, and no doubt see you around.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
Take care of yourself, buddy. All right.
Okay. See you later on.
See you later, mate.
Right.
Enjoyed that. That went well.
Aye, mate. That was good. Thanks very much, Paul.
No bother at all.
No, cracking conversation for us, man. Aye, man. I'm just going to get going because I've got so much to do. It's not even funny for work and stuff. But I'll get this up and we'll let you know when it's out, mate.
Yeah.
Aye, man.
Look out for it. Okay.
Thanks again, Paul. See you soon.
See you later. See you later, Matt. Cheers, mate.
Bye, mate. Catch you soon.
You know you show the fear inside, it grows below the upper line. Oh, you know you tried to hold you tightly by my side when all is crashing down. You'll never reach the surface, you live underground. Sky fire comes around when the steel rain falls to the ground. There is panic on the streets, a blackened sea full of shuffling feet. Sky fire, can't you see? You can try but you won't break me. It all alive is burning bright, and I won't back out. It's day to day, night to night. We have no choice who gets to roll the dice. You'll never reach the surface, you live underground. Sky fire comes around when the steel rain falls to the ground. There is panic on the streets, a blackened sea full of shuffling feet. Sky fire, can't you see? You can try but you won't break me. Blackened sea full of shuffling feet. Sky fire, can't you see? You can try but you won't break me.